Hello everyone and welcome back to the deepest slash massive YouTube iceberg, part 2 of tier 5, the Weirdo tier. Now, if you found this video through your recommended or something and you want to go back and watch the previous episodes of the series, I'd like to warn you ahead of time that my mic is really crappy at the start of this, and it doesn't get better until about halfway or a third of the way through part 1 of tier 3. Now, with all that out of the way, without any further ado, let's get on to the entries of part 2 of tier 5. KOKOFREAKBEAN. This is a YouTube channel that has now been renamed to KOKOFREAKBEAN 2 Electric Boogaloo, because I guess the old one got deleted for whatever reason. And he's an animator, and though he's only made 19 videos, they're all very interesting. They're like these glitchy messes where it's just a mishmash of all kinds of colors and shapes without any, seemingly no rhyme or reason. Almost all the videos are set to and synced up with some quote-unquote music. Most of this music is just really glitchy, noisy, static kind of stuff that you would really hesitate to even call music at all, though a few of his videos are set to actual techno. I guess not techno, but music that electronic music you'd kind of expect a DJ to be playing. Particularly of note is his most recently created video, which is an actual visualization of a song by Marshmello and some artist called Weewek I've never heard of. And I say his most recent upload, but it was 3 years ago. Yeah, he kind of just stopped uploading for whatever reason. A few of his videos also use real-life visuals and sort of mishmash the glitchy aesthetic of his videos with the real world and have it start off normal but then fade into the insanity. It's kind of a shame they stopped uploading. Spanish Spongebob MS Paint videos. So I know this says videos plural, but I could only really find 2, which, I mean, that might be all that this entry is referring to. Feel free to give me more information in the comments if you know what else this could be referring to, but I think it's mostly referring to these 2 videos. One of them is a very poorly made animation of SpongeBob in MS Paint, which involves Squidward using a GUN to unalive the other SpongeBob characters, with the dialogue being in Spanish, so of course I can't really tell what they're saying, but what I can tell is that the guy who's narrating the dialogue is yelling at the top of his lungs. ¡Soy And some of the comments of this video say that it was in a Gen Z childhood trauma playlist or Iceberg, which, yeah, I can definitely see a kid stumbling on that, being scared by it, both how loud it is and their inability to understand it, and, SpongeBob characters unaliving. And then the other one I found was something I didn't even find on YouTube. I found it from a tip of my tongue Reddit post, where it's an MS Paint video, again in Spanish, and it's an animation of a dude breaking into a house, which is Squidward's house, even though it's just a normal human house and not Squidward's tiki house. But he breaks in, he sneaks into Squidward's bathroom and sees Squidward taking a poop. So yeah, maybe the entry's referring to that also. Shed17 / Paul's Vids. Shed17 is a horror / comedy video that's a parody of Thomas the Tank Engine, designed to be a documentary in the world of Thomas the Tank Engine, complete with interviews from 3D models made to look like the little wooden peg people from Thomas the Tank Engine. The story of Shed17 follows this scientist who worked with Germany during World War II, but eventually fled and ended up in Sodor Island, an island which was, mainly comprised of a lot of railways. And he started a research company there. And he had a kid named Thomas who was unalived by being run over by one of the trains. And so the doctor went to work in the titular Shed17 to create a biomechanical train that had Thomas's face and flesh and memories. And ever since he did that, it shook the world and caused a bunch of people, from rich billionaires to terminally ill patients, to begin trying to mailing letters to him and asking him to turn them into, flesh trains as well. And the doctor refused because he's no, it was kind of a crime against against nature the first time. But the fat conductor who owned the railways bought the research company,
and began accepting rich enough people's requests and turning them into, trains. And the island became so popular and well known that that's where the TV show and books come in. And then they got like I guess the TV show is a reality show based off of the or a reality show that happened on the island, and the books were based off of the events on the island. However, accidents, very gory accidents, started happening on the island, and they happened more and more frequently and became worse over time. And the only train who never had any accidents was Thomas. And all the trains were forbidden from finding out why this was, which the answers to why this was lied within Shed 17, and the Fat Conductor went out of his way to destroy any trains that tried to find out the secrets, until eventually Thomas himself went into Shed 17 and found out that the reason was because basically Thomas was not actually a first attempt. There had been many, many other versions of Thomas created in Shed 17, which had all failed, and some of them are still left partially alive as these metallic, fleshy hybrids that look almost nothing like the actual trains. And Thomas was only the final attempt. And the scientist had been very careful and had tried over and over and over to get Thomas to be this perfect train, which was why he had never failed. Whereas the Fat Conductor was really greedy and just wanted money and was willing to cut corners to get that money, and had built the future trains without any of the experience or expertise that the group who made Thomas had. And when Thomas found out about this, he had like a little existential crisis and kind of blew up. And since then, the island basically became abandoned. The conductor went into hiding, and bio trains were banned worldwide, except for in China, because I don't know, the creator's racist, I guess. And speaking of the creator, Paul's Vids, he makes other content too, most of which being Thomas the Tank Engine animations, but there's also videos of him like playing with his cat, various just like music pieces he's created. There's a video called The Truth About Bertha, which is some British show I've never fucking heard about. And it's a video similar to Shed 17, where it's like a documentary about the the truth behind it. Except it's not as well made or as interesting as Shed 17 and didn't get as popular. And most notably, there's a series of videos he has called Thomas's PC Adventures. And no, it's PC as in politically correct, not like computer PC. And it's a very weird series. Like the first episode is just kind of a joke. Like there's these trains that look like they're like hooded trains and they're meant to look like Muslims, and everyone doesn't trust them, and then everyone's things get stolen, but it turns out it was one of the trains that was already on the island and not one of the Muslim trains. And then the second episode is like about furries, I guess. I'm not really sure what the fuck that has to do with political correctness, really, but okay. And then the third and fifth episode are about like transgender issues, and the fourth episode is about like fat acceptance or overweight acceptance, whatever it's called. You know what I'm saying. And these ones he seems to be more so making a statement, I think, against these things. I say I think because the third episode kind of has like a message that seems to be pro trans at the end, but then even though everything before it seemed to be anti trans. But then there's also a joke at the end where like the train that became electrical comes out of the tunnel and gets electrocuted by the rain. And I'm not sure if that's like an actual like transphobic joke or if it's just a dumb joke he put at the end about like just a dumb train joke he put at the end, because it does come right after like Henry's speech to of that like trans people are good and individuality is good and whatever. So I don't really know what he's trying to say with that episode. But yeah, the third episode and fifth episode seem very much like they're mocking political correctness, with the fifth episode in particular mocking cancel culture. Channel hijacking. This refers to when hackers will pretend to be a company that wants to sponsor a YouTuber and will use this to slip some sort of malware into the YouTuber's channel and bypass their two-factor authentication and take over their channel. This mostly happens to small channels, but it's happened to much bigger channels several times throughout YouTube's history. In fact, I talked about it earlier with the Our hacking incident, but it's been happening fairly recently with these weird crypto scams that keep hacking channels and just replacing every video on the channel with like live streams of Elon Musk and just promoting cryptocurrency and blocking out anyone who knows what the channel originally was. And this has happened to some pretty big YouTubers like Billiam and Linus Tech Tips.
Japanese ghost, haunted hospital, full footage. This is a Japanese horror video that's designed to look like a news report, though it's fairly obvious that it's a fake one. The video opens with a card of text that says basically anyone who watches this has been driven either insane or committed self-gaming. Watch at your own risk. Ooh. It then cuts to the report proper, and the reporter is standing outside an abandoned hospital, and she's like, yeah, this hospital is supposedly haunted, and, like, teenagers like to come here and, like, dare each other to go here because of it's the rumors that surround it and how it's become like an urban legend of sorts in the nearby area. She then interviews two people who have been to the hospital before, one of whom took pictures which contain this specter humanoid being, though I can't really make out what's supposed to be so strange about it because it's really far in the background of the photo, and also this video is like super pixelated and low quality. And the second guy she interviews claims to have been injured, and you can tell that he's injured because he stuck a band-aid onto his forehead. And he apparently lost a camera inside of there. So then the reporter goes and explores the hospital. She wanders around for a few moments and almost immediately finds the camera that the second guy left behind. She scrolls through the photos and then she notices something and screams. The video then cuts to another text card which explains that the reporter went insane after this, and when they slowed down the footage they found the spectral being from the photo, and he still looks pretty unremarkable and just like a human. I don't know what's so weird about him. So then the reporter and her crew continue wandering through the hospital for a few more minutes, and then at the end of the video, they find like some sort of red flesh blob. I honestly would have no idea what the hell this thing is supposed to be if it wasn't for Scare Theater's video covering this, where he describes it as a surgeon holding a baby, which, considering it's a hospital, is probably the most likely option, but it's so fucking pixelated, I can't make out what this is beyond a vague red shape. And then once you see that, the video just ends.
Presenting Oscar, the modular body. This video shows a scientist who created, well, a modular body. What that means is the body is divided into multiple pieces, the most important of which is the brain, which is not an actual body part, but a sort of computer embedded into like a block. But then the other body parts are all like these fleshy cubes which contain various organs, whether those be hearts or lungs, and others are instead limbs that can move around, and they all contain ends that can be plugged into one another. And if these modules are connected to the brain in some way, whether that be directly or through other body parts, the brain can then control and send signals to these body parts to move the limbs around or have the heart and lungs pump and breathe for it. With the idea being that as this technology grows, eventually humans could become modular so that if one of your organs fails, you can just take it out and replace it with a new, better organ. Although it's fairly simplistic when compared to a human body, with it only being about like a hand, like about the size of a hand, and there not really being any body parts beyond just basic limbs and a heart and lungs. Well, and the brain, of course. And the brain is fairly simplistic, being able to do little more than just kind of move the body around and crawl and not in sterile environments. Now, this is fake. It's not real, unfortunately. But a lot of people, including me when I first saw this, were duped into believing it was real because of how very professionally it's presented and the high production value. This video is a part of an online fictional story called The Modular Body, which is presented both through the YouTube channel that this video can be found on, as well as through a website called The Modular Body, which basically just plays the YouTube videos with like some dark ambience in the background. Although there is like a pathway that leads you from one video to the next, but it's a very disorganized pathway to sort of fit into the theme of like a body that can be taken apart and put back together. So you can kind of watch the videos in whatever order you want. These videos, when put together, don't really form a story in the traditional sense with like a series of events and characters. It more so expresses the idea of the modular body and presents to us both how that would function in the real world as well as what people's reaction would be. As a lot of these videos either A focus on explaining the actual like scientific mechanics of how the modular body works, like how the different blood vessels are able to interlock with one another when the body is connected, how the flesh was grown, how how the brain was programmed, how they train the brain, how they stimulate the flesh, the cocktail of drugs that they use to keep it from being unalived because it doesn't have a complete immune system yet, and the company's ultimate plans as to what they want to expand this modular concept to eventually do. The other videos on the website focus on the public reaction to the modular body and like their questions of is this being conscious when it's basically just a programmed AI? What kind of rights should we give to a being like this? Will a being like this eventually evolve with humanity and expand humanity to be something greater, or will it replace humanity? Is this ethical? What are the motives behind the person who made this? Stuff like that. And again, it's not really a story in the sense that there isn't like a conclusion to any of this. There's no start, no rising action, no falling action. It's just kind of laying out what would happen, and it never really goes beyond the time frame of the first couple of, I guess, years into the creation of Oscar, because nothing on the website really details the company expanding on the technology and on the modular body any more than what we see in the video. It just kind of starts, we're introduced to this crawling fleshy thing with a simplistic brain, and it ends there. Pedro Ruiz III expiration. Pedro Ruiz III was a YouTuber who, alongside his girlfriend Mona Lisa, would make various prank and stunt videos. Though the YouTube channel featured both of them, it was owned by his girlfriend. Eventually, he created his own YouTube channel, and he wanted to kick his channel off with a bang by pulling a stunt where he would shoot himself and have his girlfriend try and block the bullet with a book, which went about as well as you could expect. I kind of feel like he probably wasn't in the best mental state, not just because of, why would you do that, but like he seemed fully aware that what he was doing was really stupid and would probably get him unalived. And he even said, like, I'm fully prepared to go to heaven and have God reject me because of how stupid this is. Yet he also doesn't really seem like depressive or self game endal at all. Like, he seems just more impulsive than anything. I mean, I'm no like psychologist, but at least that's what I get from watching it. After the video was created, his girlfriend Mona Lisa was arrested. She spent 10 days in jail, 6 months under house arrest, and 10 years on probation, and has been forbidden from carrying a firearm in America for the rest of her life. Also, due to the low view count of the video before it was deleted, the video has become lost media, though this might be one of the few cases of lost media where I'm not too eager to get it found. The Wizard of Oz face. Remember how in the previous tier of the iceberg, I talked about the hanging munchkin in the Wizard of Oz? Well, this video is related to that. So, this video is of a man with a VHS tape of the Wizard of Oz, and he goes to the scene where the hanging munchkin rumor is, and he tries to debunk the rumor. But because of how old the VHS tape is, it kind of just like fades into static for part of the scene. And when the screen fades to static, you can see a pale, creepy face in the middle of it. This image is actually taken from a trailer for The Exorcist, one that was eventually banned because it had flashing lights. So there's two possible explanations for what's going on here. One, VHSs are known to like sometimes tape something. Basically, they're known to sometimes tape X over Y. when you're just trying to tape Y. And in this case, Y is the Wizard of Oz and X is the Exorcist trailer. So he just accidentally ended up getting the Exorcist trailer onto the Wizard of Oz. The other explanation, and the more likely one, is he faked it for views. I mean, how likely is it that that face just happened to end up right in the middle of the screen? Also pretty suspicious that he doesn't mention it at all in either the video or his comment section, despite that being the main thing people are asking about there. Watermelon, a cautionary tale. You know how when you're a kid, your parents tell you don't eat watermelon seeds or a watermelon will grow in your stomach? Well, this CGI animation basically takes that concept to its most logical conclusion, where a kid eats watermelon seeds and he starts growing watermelon roots out of his nose and out of his mouth. His mouth eventually turns into like the inner flesh of a watermelon. He starts dripping watermelon juice from his nose. His stomach turns into a watermelon, and eventually he turns into an anthropomorphic watermelon. And as he dances around he ends up flying through the air and transforming it into just a normal non-sentient watermelon and falls onto the ground where he splats into many pieces which kids then eat. And while this is like a lighthearted CGI animation, the concept behind it is kind of a pretty horrifying bodily horror concept. And if it wasn't presented in such a lighthearted way, you could probably genuinely make like a horror film out of it. This animation got particularly popular like 2 years ago because someone made a meme where they sped it up and put unravel over it. The Cat with Hands. This is a short, couple minute long horror film about these two British dudes, one of whom is mute, that walk over to a well, and the man who can talk is singing as he does so. And when he gets to the well, he tells the other man a story about this monster that came from the well, who looked like a cat but had, human hands instead of front paws. And one day a child went to the well, and the cat grabbed the kid and stole his face, leaving the kid faceless and giving the cat a human face. And then the cat ate the rest of the kid's body. And from there, the cat went around stealing more body parts of more people and adding them to itself, and then eating the rest of the humans that were left after it was done stealing from them, until eventually it became almost entirely human except for one body part, that being its tongue. And then as he finishes telling the story, the mute man kisses him and steals his tongue, and then eats the rest of his body, and walks away singing the same song that the man sung in the same voice. Do you get it? It's like cat got your tongue. Do you get it? It's like cat got your tongue. Very clever pun. You get it? Jay Swingler's failed microwave cement stunt. Jay Swingler is a YouTuber who does a bunch of really extreme and really stupid stunts for his YouTube channel. One of these stunts went a little wrong. That stunt was one where he stuck his head inside of a microwave and filled it with polyphila, which is a liquid substance that, when dried off, which they did with a blow dryer, hardens and becomes very similar to concrete, though it's not quite as hard as concrete. Now, he did take some safety precautions. He covered his face with a plastic bag so that the concrete-like substance would not actually stick onto his face, and he also had a breathing tube connected to his nose that went outside of the cement block. However, due to the way that the cement moved around when it was still in its liquid unhardened form, the breathing tube became somewhat, I guess, squished or blocked. The full explanation of what went wrong isn't really available as far as I can tell, but something went wrong that caused him to be unable to get sufficient air through the tube. So his friends called some first responders who came in, and they broke the cement block off of his head, and he was thankfully saved. But imagine you're one of those first responders. You get called in to go save someone's life, and the reason for why they're in danger is they sealed their face inside of a block of a concrete-like substance. If that was me, if I was responding to that, I'd just end it. I'd end it right there. There's nothing left. My Scary Pokemon Blue story. This is a creepypasta created by the YouTuber Blame Truth the Codfather, a YouTuber who's still making videos to this day. In the creepypasta, he has a copy of Pokemon Blue in which he catches Missing No, except Missing No transforms into Ditto, and then Ditto transforms into a bunch of different Pokemon, which, obviously that is something Ditto is supposed to do, but it doesn't transform into them in the middle of the battle like it should. It transforms into them in his PC when he's switching out his Pokemon. And all 5 of the Pokemon Ditto transforms into, if you take the first letter of their names in order, spell out the word dead. And after switching to these 5 Pokemon, it then switches to Ditto again, but now a gray version of Ditto, and is named White Hand. White Hand being referenced to a urban legend around the first Pokemon games that there was a scrapped Pokemon who had a sprite that looked like a rotted pale hand, which is based off of a line of dialogue an NPC has in front of the Pokemon Tower where they say, "Oh, you don't believe in ghosts? Then what's that white hand on your shoulder?" After Blame Truth discovers the white hand in his game, white hand the Ditto, not the white hand Pokemon, strange paranormal occurrences begin happening in his house IRL. And drawers start opening and closing, brooms start falling over. He starts seeing faint lights flashing at night. But most of the objects that get moved around all have one thing in common. They're all blue or contain something blue within them. Blame Truth also realizes that all of the Pokemon that the Ditto transformed into have 5 letters in their name. White also has 5 letters in its name, and though hand is only 4 letters long, a hand has 5 fingers. As the paranormal occurrences in his house go on, paranormal occurrences in the game start increasing as well as he attempts to figure out what's going on. The game starts randomly crashing. He's unable to play the game at all, even with a really advanced Game Boy. Eventually, the game gives him 2 seemingly random numbers, one of which, if inputted on a calculator and flipped upside down, reads hell and is also believed to be a spiritual number by some people, and the other of which is both related to a Bible verse that honestly seemingly has nothing to do with the story at all, and is also a time which he wakes up at the exact minute of the next night. Eventually, the story concludes with him receiving an email from a random subscriber who believes the apparition, both in the cartridge and in the real world, to be that of his grandfather. And the reason for this is because his grandfather fought in World War I and sustained 5 wounds, but miraculously survived all of them. And his grandfather believed that this was a sort of prophecy because Jesus was wounded 5 times before his unalivement. And so the grandfather believed that he was going to be some sort of sacrifice because of this. And sure enough, the grandfather, after coming back from World War I, was unalived by a influenza epidemic that was occurring at the time, which was known colloquially as the blue unalivement. Hence why the ghost can only possess blue things. And the grandfather being alive by this epidemic likely saved his entire family from being afflicted with it, so in a way it sort of was a sacrifice. And there's also a poster from around this time that depicts a very famous poster that depicts a disembodied white hand, hence, white hand and everything in the Pokemon Blue white hand Ditto. Demon possessed singing trout. You know those Billy Bass fish that you put on the wall and then they sing "Don't worry, be happy" and sometimes other songs? Well, this is a video of one of those trouts as its battery is running out, and every time it moves its head to look away from the wall, its voice gets all glitchy and garbled. Venus Angel. Venus Angel is a YouTuber who, ever since she was 13, dressed in Lolita fashion for her YouTube channel, which, for those who don't know, is a Japanese fashion style that involves dressing up to look like a doll. And she became one of the most famous and well-known YouTubers who did this, as there were actually quite a few. But she also became kind of controversial as she and her mother both started beef with pretty much every other YouTuber in that space of YouTube. However, it was eventually discovered that this was not Venus's fault at all, and rather the fault of her mother, as eventually she got a boyfriend, and from there, her mother basically tried everything in her power to slander the boyfriend and break up her daughter's relationship with her boyfriend. And it became apparent around this time that her mother had been very overly controlling of her throughout her entire career, had been controlling her accounts multiple times, which was why a lot of the beefs were started, was very insecure and was vicariously living through her daughter, to the point of even dressing up as her daughter sometimes, and also grossly sexualized her daughter quite a bit as well, even when she was underage. Eventually, though, Venus's boyfriend helped her escape from her mother, and the two of them moved away, and she continues uploading videos on her YouTube channel, but now as her own persona and not one created by her mother. Born with Three Mouths. There are a bunch of videos titled Born with Three Mouths, all made by the same channel, and they're all pretty much the same thing. There's a woman who has mouths in place of her eyes, and except for the first one where there's like a banshee scream from the woman at the beginning, they all just feature the women making various different expressions with their mouths, with each of the mouths having a different expression than the other two. Some of the videos also feature the women smoking and feeding some of the mouths, which, looks a little weird with the way that they're on her eyes. The ending of the first video also has a book, I think, called Gratuitous Sex and Violence linked or promoted at the end of it. And in the description of the first video, it reads, Three Mouths, the ultimate seduction. So maybe this is some kind of commentary on sexualization of women or something that I don't really understand. I don't know. Video dating tape. This is an VHS tape that looks like it was made in the late 80s or early 90s, which shows a man named Tony who claims to be a business entrepreneur who wants to date a woman so he can spend his life together with her, as his business style has afforded him a life of luxury that he wants to share. However, at various points in the video, you can hear someone screaming in the background and Tony telling them to shut up, with the implication being that he's a kidnapper. And despite what some comments would have you believe, it's fake. The description on the video alone should pretty much prove that it is fake. As the description reads, found this inside a VCR I got at a car boot sale, saws bad quality tape but got chewed, I think haha weird tape, which is pretty casual thing to put in the description for a tape of a presumed kidnapper. But Scare Theater managed to identify that the guy who claims to be Tony in this video is an actor from something else, or it's at least very likely to be an actor, so yeah, it's almost definitely fake. GachaTubers. Gacha Life is like this mobile game where you can create these chibi figures and dress them up in a variety of different clothings and put them in scenes and add dialogue and create miniature stories. Most of the fan base of this game is children. And the combination of the fan base being children, as well as how simple it is to make stories using Gacha Life, has led to a type of YouTuber who create various stories using Gacha Life. And Gacha Life YouTubers are infamous for being just fucking batshit insane and awful and the worst thing ever. Seriously, if you look up Gacha Life story, you'll be flooded with stories about, among other things, incest, child diddling, racism, the German military between 1939 and 1945, abuse, and fetish content. And if you're wondering why all these things exist despite the fanbase being children, I think there are two explanations. The first and more obvious explanation is that there are adults in this community that are, basically doing the Elsa Gate thing where they're trying to insert their fetishes into kids' content to sort of groom children. The other explanation is that because all of these topics are taboo, these children have some sort of there's some sort of forbidden fruit effect about it that makes the children want to make stories about it more. And because they're really young, they don't understand what's wrong with what they're making and will make it anyway. No Through Road. This is a found footage short horror video which became extremely popular when it was created due to how realistic it looked, and actually Keep in mind this was like the early days of YouTube when people weren't as accustomed to high production horror videos, and so a lot of people like thought that it was real. Now, what the actual video consists of is it starts with like a sort of like a little bit of exposition that tells us there was these four boys in a car who were all found unalived in a car wreck, and this tape was found next to them, and what you're going to watch is this tape. And then it shows these four boys driving in a car through the countryside at night, and eventually they come across a tunnel with a sign reading "No Through Road" next to it. However, the driver doesn't know what that means, and so he drives through the tunnel anyway. They keep driving down the road and eventually reach a fork in the road. However, as they continue driving, they reach the same fork, and they keep reaching it multiple times, going left each time. Eventually, they try to break out of this loop by going right, and this ends up taking them back to the tunnel. Then some spooky things happen, like the radio of the car starts playing this creepy song from a horror movie, and then a white masked man appears in front of the car and attacks all of them. And the video ends with him beating one of the boys named Steven on the ground with his own camera and beating him to what appears to be expiration. It's also worth noting that there's this like glitch effect where a bunch of other videos seemingly filmed by the boys and also seemingly much more innocent are just sort of like pasted over the main video of them in the car. However, it doesn't really seem like that has much of an effect on the story and is just there for, creep factor. But I do think it's worth noting because this is like one of the first instances of a horror YouTube channel using glitch effects as some way of increasing the terror of one of their videos. Now, No Through Road, I believe to have originally just been like a one-off. Like I think it was supposed to be just one and done, but it got so popular that he made 3 sequels to it, which all follow tapes that were kept classified by like the police and then stolen by the supposed uploader of the video to be uploaded to YouTube. These videos show James, who is the only survivor of the 4 boys, and Dave, someone who is not with the 4 boys, who are driving out into the countryside to put some flowers as sort of like a memorial to the other 3. They have a little conversation during which James reveals that he has basically no memory of the night and just remembers waking up in a hospital. They then continue driving through the countryside until it's night, and on the way they have a conversation about Doctor Who, which is foreshadowing towards what's about to happen. They end up getting stuck in the same loop, in the same road loop that the boys were stuck in 3 years ago. And as they drive around trying to get out of it, Steven, one of the original 4 boys, runs up to their car. And according to him, it's only been like a few minutes, not 3 years. So they continue driving around some more. Eventually, they encounter the masked man and try to run him over with a car, but when they do, they sort of just like glitch into the tunnel. And then they find this hut that's filled with like phrases inscribed on the walls that the boys said in the first video, as well as a collection of white masks. And then, as the current group of boys leaves, they see their past selves getting attacked by the masked man from 3 years ago. And that's when it dawns on the viewer that this series is about a time loop. Which means that these next couple events are extremely convoluted, so I might not get the details fully correct, but I'll try my best. Who's Hungry? This is a short horror animation that appears to have been drawn in pencils and is completely black and white. The story of the animation follows 2 siblings, a boy and a girl, who go up to this ice cream truck. The man in the ice cream truck is like a giant, and he lures them in with some ice cream and then kidnaps them. He locks the boy inside of a freezer or an ice box and hangs the girl on a meat hook by her dress. And he then takes another kid that he had already captured who had been completely frozen by the icebox and grinds him up into like this flesh ice cream, which he then eats as he watches TV. While he's doing this, the girl manages to get the meat hook loose from the wall and stabs the ice cream man with it, seemingly unaliving him. She then frees her brother, and the 2 of them leave the house. But as they're about to leave, the boy gets distracted and goes to eat some of the ice cream, even though he knows it's flesh ice cream. but I guess he likes it. And while this is happening, the ice cream man, who actually was not unalived, gets up and chases them down. But while he's chasing them, he trips on some of the flesh ice cream and falls into a blender, which the girl goes back to hit the button on, causing him to be blended into flesh ice cream. And then the two of them leave. I've also heard some people saying that, like, in the comment section saying that the kid eating that flesh ice cream means that he's going to grow up to be an ice cream man like the one that was unalived. Ian Miller. Ian Miller is an animator who primarily specializes in grotesque animations, that both has his own YouTube channel and has also worked for various shows on both Cartoon Network and Adult Swim, namely Super Jail. Most of his animations usually are just like a simple, crude joke that's mostly carried by the animation style. Some examples of this include Mark's Parasite, it's an animation about this dude who's unable to do any substances because there's a snake inside of his body that keeps eating them before he can. Cheap Joke, which is about this really fancy businessman that goes to the bathroom and then someone tells him a your mom joke and he bursts out laughing with his facial expressions animated in very extreme up close detail. Or Walter, which is about this weird alien creature which like some hillbilly shoots and then just says, I don't know what it was, but I'm gonna eat it. And he also has a series of videos on his channel about a character called Captain Tardigrade, which is like a superhero who's a tardigrade, which is a microscopic organism that's an extremophile and can survive extreme environments and is therefore invincible. And that's like the entire joke of the series is that he can just survive everything and ends up unintentionally unaliving everyone around him because he's too stupid to realize that they're not extremophiles. And he also has a somewhat longer animation, which is like 6 minutes long, called Walter, the Curse of the Frog Lord, which is like about a kid and his dad, who are both like hillbillies, going to get mercy on the Frog Lord after the kid blows up a frog. Kuyang Dayak / Chibonk 182. First, I'm going to explain what the hell kuyang dayak even means. A kuyang is a mythical creature from the folklore of various Southeast Asian nations, most notably those that exist on the islands off the coast of Southeast Asia, such as Indonesia and the Philippines. Kuyangs are often depicted as a disembodied female head which has like a woman's internal organs dripping beneath it, but no external body features, and is often said to drink the blood of newborn babies. Now, obviously, it's a folklore tale, and the exact depiction varies from culture to culture, but that's the general depiction you'll get if you look it up. And as for dayak, dayak is an umbrella term for various different ethnic groups that lived in the center areas of islands off the coast of Southeast Asia. So, in other words, the video's title is implying that this is a kuyang of dayak descent. And the video shows what does indeed appear to be a kuyang to some extent. There's a woman's head lying down on a mattress that appears to be coming off of like a crocodile or some other small animal's body. It's like it kind of looks like a lizard. It kind of looks like a ferret. It's very hard to tell what it is because of how low quality the camera is. Now, it doesn't really take a rocket scientist to find out that the woman was probably just hiding inside of some sort of chamber beneath the floor with only her head sticking out, using the hair to cover up her neck, and then had either a decapitated animal or a, replica of an animal next to her to make it look like a kuyang. But this video certainly did fool a lot of children back in the day. I also believe that this woman was probably doing this hoax herself rather than for the video and was doing it to like attract tourists or something because of the way that she's like behind a caged wall. It definitely doesn't look like the YouTubers set this up just for their YouTube channel. Now, the channel that uploaded this, Chibonk182, has two other videos. One of them is called Leek Bali Panampakan, which translates to Layak sighted in Bali. And a layak is another mythical creature of Indonesian origin that also eats newborn babies' blood. And this video shows someone in a mask that appears to be based off of a layak. And I think there's like a group of people camping and like I think they beat it up. Again, the camera quality is so fucking horribly low quality, it's impossible for me to tell what the fuck is going on. And then there's one other video on the channel which has significantly less views than the other two, and it's called Husni Mubarak Orange Teriak, which is just a snippet of a news report about like the richest man in Indonesia. Kind of out of place with the other videos. These videos were all uploaded like 10 years ago, so we're probably never going to see any more uploads from this channel. But one thing I do have to point out is this channel is only subscribed to one other channel, that being Norms. And Norms only has one video uploaded 16 years ago called My Cousin Doing the Rock's Eyebrows, parentheses, Arsler. I don't know, I had to tell people about that. My deceased great-grandma's coffin in my own backyard. So this is a video of a man named DJ Deaf Joey, and he's deaf, as the name implies, and he communicates through sign language, though there are words that come up to, explain what he's saying to people who can't read sign language. And he basically explains that his great-grandmother, who expired in 1945, was unable to be kept at the cemetery due to quote-unquote corruption, whatever the hell that means, and so he's keeping her in his backyard and asks the viewers of the video not to report him to authorities. And he then lifts the coffin lid and reveals her shriveled up body with its dark gray skin, and then he kisses her on the mouth several times. Sorry, just had to give you a moment to let that sink in. Now, I actually couldn't find any videos debunking this. However, I personally believe it not to be real, and that's for a couple reasons. One, it's illegal to own a expired body in your residence, and he would have definitely been reported to the authorities by now if he actually was keeping it. Two, for an actual unalived body, it sure is a very easy video to find by simply searching it on YouTube, when normally YouTube would remove those videos from its platforms or completely blacklist them, so it would be impossible to find them through almost anything other than playlists. 3, I've been seeing some people in the comment section of this video and discussions of it on places like Reddit talking about how it looks like the fake mummies that they have at like carnivals. Well, used to have at carnivals several decades ago, and that this is probably one of those that he just bought. 5, if she was unalived in 1945, then her body would have almost completely been turned into nothing but a skeleton by now. And 6, why would you kiss the unalived body of your great-grandmother on the mouth? Why would you do that? Why? Why? No, that's not real. It's not real. He didn't do that. David Liebe Hart, Salame. This is a sketch from Tim and Eric's awesome show Great Job, starring David Liebe Hart, who appears to be a somewhat mentally ill man. I can't find out if he's actually mentally ill, but I believe he is because he doesn't act fully lucid all the time. And like he doesn't completely understand what's going on, but does mostly understand, if that makes any sense. And he talks about how there are humanoid beings living amongst humans that have come from the stars and other planets, and they greet each other using the phrase Salame. And then he sings a song about it with this cat puppet that is really like, it's either a cat or a tiger, and its face looks really just screwed up. It looks kind of like a really old vintage puppet from like the 50s or 60s that comes across as uncanny unintentionally. And while singing his song, he attempts to use this puppet to basically like sing part of the songs as though he's ventriloquizing it. Is that a word, ventriloquizing? But I don't think he understands what ventriloquism is, because he's still very, like, his mouth is very clearly moving and he's not making it. Like, you can still very clearly see his mouth moving, and he's not trying to hide it at all, so it's just him moving the puppet and speaking for the puppet with his mouth moving next to it. This sketch was so well received that David Liebe Hart ended up getting his own like mini-series on Adult Swim in 2019 called I Love David, in which he reveals more details about his life, such as the fact that he is a Christian scientist, and he believes in aliens, and like he actually believes in them, and that wasn't just a part of the song, something he made up for his song. And he believes that before he was born, he was being examined by a bunch of different aliens who told him what his life was going to be like and then sent him through a tunnel. And he also sung an amazing remix of Hallelujah for Shrek Retold. Arabic YouTube. So I don't think this is referring to Arabic YouTube as a whole, but what I think this refers to is this search algorithm loophole that existed a while ago, though it's similar to full stop punctuation. It's mostly been taken out of the algorithm as far as I can tell. But for whatever reason, there were a bunch of videos that all just had the title, Woman Claims She is Virgin Mary and Married to Jesus Christ, but in Arabic. And similar to full stop punctuation, these videos tended to have very disturbing thumbnails, usually taken from other sources, and oftentimes also contained characters from kids shows put in disturbing situations because this was also a little bit of an Elsagate thing for some reason. But then you watch the actual videos and it's just like shit posts, pretty much. Some of the thumbnails also contained lewd content, but that was a lot less common than the typical graphic content. Now, as for why this loophole exists, I don't know why it's specifically the phrase woman claims she's the Virgin Mary and married to Jesus Christ that manages to break the algorithm in this way. But what I do know is, or what I at least think I know, is why it's specifically Arabic that this happens in. You see, Arabic is unique from all the other written languages in the world because it's written right to left rather than left to right, which presents a bit of a problem when your Anglo-centric platform is attempting to program Arabic into it. And there are various glitches that you can see with comments that have Arabic text in how the text it's glitches can be found in comments that have both Arabic text and text from other languages and how the text is presented. And if something as minor as a comment can get altered by the way Arabic is written, I think it's safe to say that this likely has something to do with how Arabic can affect the search algorithm and allows these shitposts to be born. I also think that while it's less likely, this entry could also be referring to Arab Funny, which is an Arabic meme format that basically just involves overloading the video with as much content as possible, very similar to the 21st century humor trend that would emerge later. TrollStation. This is a prank channel, which is unique amongst other prank channels in the sense that instead of just being one person, it's a group of people who all sort of join together to cooperatively run this channel. And as you could imagine, they tried pulling extremely dumb pranks. Some of their most poorly received pranks include when three of them invaded a stadium in the middle of a game, when they pretended to rob an art gallery, and when they pretended to shoot people with an empty paintball GUN. With the art heist landing them in a little trouble with the law, nothing bad enough to get them life sentences or anything, but enough to give them a few months in prison. The stadium prank landed them a couple $100 worth of fines, or sorry, £100 worth of fines because they're British. And the paintball prank earning them a deletion of their YouTube channel, though they got it back. Look at the monkey. This is a student film, which is mostly done in black and white, but there are a few frames where the entire thing gets covered in color. But these frames are very sparingly used. The animation is set to a jazz swing song with the lyrics, "Look at the monkey, look at the funny monkey. Little red monkey acting so fidgety." And the animation seems to depict this monkey and other weird humanoid creatures that are pedaling on a bike of some kind. There's also this striped, limbless humanoid creature with fans for arms and feet, which create rain out of them. There's a few frames which kind of look like it's a set of blueprints, I guess. And at the end of the animation, it shows a bunch of these pulsating bulb-like things growing out all around the screen. So yeah, feel free to make whatever the fuck you want of that. Roleplay accounts. This is not something exclusive to YouTube. In fact, it started on DeviantArt, but it is very common on YouTube, and it refers to when someone will set their profile picture and channel name to that of a fictional character, also sometimes a real-life person, but usually a fictional character, and will then comment on videos and reply to comments in character of that character. NorthFur. NorthFur is a company that creates prosthetics for humanimals. Humanimals being this sort of subcategory of furries who, as instead of just like dressing up like animals and wearing fursuits, use prosthetics to try and make themselves look as close to animals as possible and try to look realistically like that animal in the process, which often results in them looking extremely uncanny. NorthFur has a YouTube channel in which they have like the owner of the company dress up in these prosthetics to promote them. Now, they uploaded videos pretty consistently since their creation, which was around like 15 years ago, and yeah, they uploaded pretty consistently up until around 10 years ago when they just suddenly stopped uploading, uploaded one more video 3 years after that, and then went on a 7-year hiatus up until recently, about a year ago, when they've started once again uploading videos, and are now doing it fairly consistently, only like a couple videos a year, but they're not on hiatus anymore. Now, the older videos that were uploaded before that initial hiatus were recorded with like a very low quality camera. And this camera was unable to record sound. Well, okay, it was able to record sound, but it was very low quality sound. So the creator, who by the way actually got in contact with and he confirmed this for me, but the audio was just so terrible and so low quality that he didn't consider it worth transferring to the videos, and so he uploaded most of the videos soundless. And so you have this guy who's dressed in hyper realistic animal prosthetics being recorded with a low quality camera with no sound, which all adds up to make it very uncanny and disturbing. And one of these videos stands out amongst the others, which is his dolphin muzzle review. I mean, fucking try on his dolphin muzzle demonstration, which became the most viewed video on his channel, and as of recently has become sort of like an uncanny meme where like people took the video and they added audio of a like text to speech voice saying that you're in danger and you have to look outside your house while beeping noises play in the background, like EAS beeping noises, and it concludes with like some loud screaming noises. Oh, and I also better mention this. Remember Life of Luxury? Talked about them in the last tier. They have a video where they get chased by this dude called Dolphin Man, and Dana Gonzalez made like a music video out of it. Dolphin Man is not related to Dolphin Muzzle. They're two separate things. Other Lily. This is a short horror animation about a girl named Lily and her younger sister Beth, who are in their house with their parents out doing something at night. They both go to bed, and as they do, Lily finds a drawing Beth made, which shows Beth, Lily, and a monstrous version of Lily labeled Other Lily. But Lily just shrugs it off and goes to bed. She wakes up at 3 a.m., and when she does, the other Lily from the drawing comes into her room through the window and tries to like attack her. But then she wakes up and finds out it was all a nightmare. And then she hears something downstairs, so she grabs a baseball bat and walks downstairs trying to find out what it is. And as she does, she hears something behind her and swings the bat at it, only to realize that what it was not the other Lily, but Beth, and that she accidentally just unalived her sister, only for her sister to then grow back into Other Lily, because it was actually Other Lily disguising itself as her sister, and it attacks her. But then Beth wakes up because that was all just Beth's nightmare. And she's obviously scared about that nightmare, so she goes to find Lily, but Lily is missing from her bed. So she goes downstairs, and then the other Lily's arm reaches through the window, grabs her, and pulls her out of the house suddenly. And then it ends. WTF is this original spider worm? Ringworms are a parasite that are capable of entering spider bodies via anything that a spider ingests, really. And upon entering the spider's body, they'll stay inside and feed off of the spider's bodily fluids while slowly growing more and more. Eventually, once the worm matures and becomes large enough, it will burst free from the spider's abdomen, unaliving the spider in the process. The video in question here simply showcases this event happening, and is just one of the most popular videos showcasing this event. It's also made extra gross by what appears to be bug spray all over the unalive spider and worm, which the worm appears to be exiting into, likely because the ringworms like liquid and typically try to get spiders to burst near liquid. So it thought that the bug spray was a good liquid and tried to get into it, but will probably end up being unalive by said liquid. If it's even bug spray in the first place, I mean, I'm just speculating. Ben Breedlove. Ben Breedlove was a boy who was born with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is a condition in which cardiac muscle is much thicker than it would otherwise be. Now, while most people who live with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy aren't affected by this until later in their lives, some people unfortunately have a worse version of this condition, which can affect them earlier in life, and this often leads to complications that can be very life threatening. Ben Breedlove was one of these unfortunate people who suffered cardiac arrest 3 times, but managed to survive all 3 until unfortunately he passed away from a 4th cardiac arrest in 2011. However, shortly before he passed, he created 2 videos on his YouTube channel where he uploaded 2 videos called This Is My Story Parts 1 and 2. Both videos are set to a piano version, an instrumental piano version of Mad World, and have him hold notes up to the camera, basically explaining his life story on them. And he talks about how one of the times when he suffered cardiac arrest but survived, he had this sort of vision where he was in a white room with the rapper Kid Curdy, who's his favorite rapper, and was singing the song Mr. Ranger, which has a lyric in it called When Will the Heaven Begin? A line which would then go on to be the title of a book his sister created about his life and his honor. His story was considered very heartbreaking by many people and got worldwide coverage. There was a fund for his memorial. There was this parade where people created a florograph of roses in honor of him. Kid Curdy himself referenced the events in his album made after the fact, and there were 2 art programs dedicated to them. One of which being where people created angel wings made out of fossilized bluestones, and the other of which was painted angel wings, which were, of course, supposed to represent, like I guess, like angels comforting him throughout his life, and was used in an event called Spread Your Wings, which was used to raise funds for a children's hospital, or I guess medical center. The Pier. This is a short, disturbing animation created by a college student, which shows this humanoid dinosaur-like creature who walks up on this dock that stretches out into the ocean and starts fishing. And while he's fishing, there's this weird fish dinosaur hybrid creature hanging out in the planks beneath the docks, which vomits out this parasite fish. The dinosaur catches the parasite fish and eats it. And he starts to walk back to the land, but as he's doing so, the dino fish thing moves its hand in the water to create like splashing noises. And the dino thinks that there's more fish in the water, so he goes back to start fishing. But as he's doing this, the parasite fish starts eating away at the lining of his stomach, causing him to start collapsing out of the pain. And he falls off the dock and gets caught by the dino fish, who then forces his mouth open and vomits more of the parasite fish into his stomach, which all start simultaneously eating away at the sides of his stomach. And then the film ends. RX Bumble. This is a music video for a techno song of the same name, and a very strange music video at that. The background of the video is a red light with like a blue web coming out of it, which isn't really that strange compared to the rest of the video. It begins with yellow text at the top of the screen saying Fetish Pro, and text in the middle of the screen saying let the machine live your fantasy. Then it shows this like pale T-posing mannequin with one red eye, one blue eye, and bright red lips, with this cone first moving towards her face and then into her ear. And then there's like this black shirted woman freaking out. And then the text, Begin Your Lust, appears on screen. And the video then proceeds to show us what can be presumed to be sexual positions. The first one being centaur style, in which the black-shirted woman is now vibrating on top of a golden T-posing centaur statue. Descending bear, in which a woman is lying on the ground and a pale, or I guess not pale, featureless model of a bear falls down on top of her. The shame cube, in which there is a man cowering in shame, and this white cube falls on top of him and completely covers him. Destroy ass, which shows a pale ass, and a countdown from 5 seconds that, when it ends, results in the ass being literally blown up into several shards. Simpson, which shows a model of Homer Simpson with a big yellow rod with 2 yellow balls next to it sticking out from his pants. I wonder what that could be. And then Simpson turns into Simpson Go as Homer Simpson then starts vibrating with his yellow rod sticking into a bent over blue haired woman. Then there's just something titled Making Love, which is just 2 T posing models vibrating in the same space. They're not even really in any position with one another. They're just sitting there, standing there, T posing and vibrating at the same time in the same place. But then it cuts to the woman now laying on the ground in front of the man, both of them still T-posing as a pyramid floats over the woman. Then there's eye massage, which shows a yellow dude's hand being stuck into the eyeballs of the woman and vibrating. Kiss and tell, which shows a cowering man being crushed in between 2 large buff men. Rage Cage, which shows a buff man that looks like Senator Armstrong standing over a yellow, shriveled up dude with a red cage around them that gets smaller and smaller, but it cuts off before the cage is able to crush them. Emerging from Sphere, which shows a white sphere which ejects a pale, featureless human from it, which flies out into space and then explodes into several shards, which a red sphere emerges from. Simplication, which shows the model of the woman getting less and less detailed over the course of a few seconds. Then we see a flesh-colored computer monitor, a bunch of deep-fried red humans standing in a circle as though they're chanting with their heads waving around. Some psychedelic kaleidoscopic colors flashing on screen. Then we see Very Strong Breeze, which is a golden unclothed woman with 2 black bars covering her breets and her you-know-what, who gets blown by a very strong breeze, knocking her down but leaving the 2 bars in. Sharing, which shows 2 businessmen with long, flesh-colored cones emerging from their pants, walking towards each other until the 2 flesh cones unite. And then one of them, they both hold out their arms, with one of their arms having a miniature, pale, featureless human inside of it, who he hands to the other one. Connecting rod, which shows 2 men who look like Senator Armstrong with a big red tube interconnecting the 2 of them at their pants. The arm, which shows a woman with a literal 3rd arm that spins and vibrates around wildly. It then just cuts to showing the background while text pops up that says, "Your desires are now met. Arousal depleted." Then it once again shows Homer Simpson, now with an American flag emerging from his yellow rod, while a copyright for the company Bad American comes up with the copyright showing that this was made in 1992, which explains the low quality and early computer feel of the animation. And then it ends with another shot of the arm. I have no idea what the meaning of this video is, if it's for or against sexuality, or if it's just completely random. I don't know. But what I do know is there's this one comment on it which is really really interesting, and I think it creeped me out. It creeped me out a decent bit when I first read it. So I'll read it right here. The shame cube was first posed as a methodology of restraint to sexual deviancy by early 20th century psychologist Dr. Hiram Nagel of the Colorado School of Mines as a means of constricting deviants until their genitalia were pressurized to a point that they felt extreme discomfort and an inability to be aroused. Test subjects assumed a fetal position and were compressed by a series of pistons across the cube's 6 faces, distributing the pressure evenly over a wide surface to reduce the risk of lasting trauma. This was intended to produce a response to pleasure that was indiscernible from the fear of dark spaces, as well as that of being immobilized. Test subjects were taken from various local mining communities where being crushed in a cave-in was a real and ever-present possibility, and subjected to a simulation of that death through the Shame Cube's mechanisms as they spoke of their fantasies in hopes of curing their desires. The result of this experiment was not a deterrent from sexual deviancy, as Dr. Nagel had hoped, but rather an erotization of the very forces that he intended to associate with trauma. 7 former test subjects descended into a mine outside the community of Silverton after working hours and allowed themselves to be crushed to death in a forced cave-in during the course of a wild orgy, seeking an unobtainable pleasure that the cube had promised them through simulation. Dr. Nagel's credentials were revoked, and his experiments buried in the most obscure volumes of the university's library. The music video Bumble by RX included the first public mention and description of his work in over 6 decades. And obviously everything there is fake, and this is just a creepypasta someone wrote in the comments, but it unnerved me when I read it, so I decided to read it here. 1_01, the Swedish Rhapsody. This is a recording of a number station known colloquially as Swedish Rhapsody. Now, a number station is a radio station that broadcasts encrypted messages in the form of a number code, which only someone who had the right pamphlet would be able to decode, and they change the pamphlets every day. And this would effectively allow spies to efficiently and safely transmit messages during times of war, with the Swedish Rhapsody specifically being constructed in Poland during the Cold War and primarily used during the Cold War, though it was shut down after the destruction of the USSR, but was reopened in 1988 and used from then to 2007 by NATO agents, or at least most likely NATO agents, until it was shut down again. The number station gets its name from the music box that it would play in between the actual number code transmissions, which was a music box version of the song, of the classical music song, The Swedish Rhapsody, which, when played on a music box, and especially then put through a radio transmission, making it all grainy and distorted, you know how radios are, makes it sound like an ice cream truck from hell. How this creepy music box thing was only made more disturbing by the fact that, for whatever reason, this number station didn't use a human voice, but rather used a voice synthesization program, which ended up unintentionally sounding like a young child. So you basically have what sounds like a young child saying numbers in a serious tone of voice, followed by a creepy music box that's kind of being like drowned out by static. Also, audio from this number station was sampled and used in the song Numbers from the official soundtrack for the game Amori. Bug buried in guy's ear. I mean, the title is pretty self-explanatory. There's a guy who feels a bug trapped in his ear, and he lays down on the ground as his friends grab a pair of tweezers and pull the bug, which is a moth, as well as a tick that they also find inside of his ear, out of it. And yeah, it looks pretty gross. Dora No More. This is one of those early YouTube animations that fits under the category of, like, you know, the edgy animations where they're like, oh, look at this, haha, I took a character who's from a child-friendly property, but I made them do something inappropriate. That character is not supposed to do that. Isn't that so funny, guys? And it's a music video about Dora the Explorer, except she faces a bunch of methods of unalivement. Some being methods that you'd expect to encounter if you were adventuring in the jungle, while others being just ordinary stuff that any child could stumble across, like being electrocuted in a wall socket, or eating pills, or talking while chewing. And of course, it makes sure to depict each of the unalivements in as much grotesque detail as the cartoonish animation style allows for. They also make sure to say Dora was unalived in as many synonyms of the phrase as they possibly can, making sure it rhymes with each of her unalivements. It also shows various other characters from the Dora the Explorer series who all just look really dumb and just have like blank expressionless faces, or I mean, well, not expressionless, but like stuck in one expression for whatever reasons. I guess that's just a design choice. And the music video ends with the Grim Reaper and the Devil carrying Dora to the underworld. Ross Creations. This is a prank YouTuber who does some great, hilarious pranks like kissing random people in public and like doing handstands and somersaults over people. He has been arrested at least 6 times. Sources vary on how many times he's been arrested. Some claim 6, some claim 10. But he has been arrested at least 6 times, though I can only find out the specifics of 3 of his arrests. Once he was arrested when he like did his somersault over a cop, and he did it twice, and this made the cop upset, and the cop arrested him. Once when he wedgied random people in a movie theater, and once when he removed a stop sign. Thankfully, it wasn't near a major road, so nothing bad came of it. I mean, other than his arrest, which I consider that a good thing. But now, as of a few years ago, he's mostly stopped doing the insane pranks and stopped doing the things just to get a reaction out of people, and is mostly focused on making comedy through his prank videos. Real life Lego minifig cosplay. This is a video created by the YouTuber Adam Savage is Tested. Now, Adam Savage is a YouTuber who he crafts various different objects, and in this video, he crafted a costume for Comic Con, which is designed to look like a Lego minifigure, but realistic, meaning a very generic pair of pants, a generic red t-shirt, giant fleshy hands that just have 2 large fingers forming a claw-like shape, and then that a fleshy square head with no hair, but this like tube almost of flesh rising out from the top of his head, forming a bowl-like shape within it, and large beady black eyes, and a twisted smile that appears almost as though it's carved into the rest of the face, with giant pinprick holes on the side for ears. And then he walks around at Comic Con wearing this mask and acting sort of like an alien that's never been exposed to human culture and is acting like surprised by everything. Weirdly enough, the kids there don't really seem to be that scared by him, but the adults are kind of freaked out and all try to go away. There's this one part where he like photo bombs, photo a bunch of people are taking, and there's this kid at the front of the group who notices him standing behind them and just turns around, and they're trying to get him to look at the camera. Yeah, and eventually he goes into the Lego section of Comic Con because he's a Lego, and he plays around with Legos a little bit, and that's it. I Am Your Grandma / Jillian Mayer. I Am Your Grandma is this short music video where Jillian explains that one day she'll have a grandkid, but she'll be unalived before she's able to meet the grandkid, so she's recorded this video for them. And the video has her dressing up in a bunch of spooky costumes, like a creepy clown, a creepy baby doll, this decaying goo monster, a circus ringleader with like a bunch of eyeliner, a fairy with a mask, this living disco ball with like spikes coming out of her head, and she just switches between each of the costumes every time she says a line. And this video was pretty popular a long time ago, and there were a bunch of like remixes and parodies of it. I don't think the video really has any sort of message or theme because it does just kind of feel like gibberish. But the actual channel, Jillian Mayer, is like does very clearly have a point to it. I'm just not sure if this specific video contributes to that point. And the point of that channel is basically like anti-technology, and like technology is bad and it's has like negative effects on our lives and has replaced spirituality, I think, is like something she brings up in one of these videos. And she's made all kinds of different like art projects, both on YouTube and in various like art centers IRL that express this theme. So, like, she has a statue where you can lay down on and lift your phone up to text, and it will, like, let you rest your arm while you sit down on it. Or, like, it will have swings that you can swing on, but they're, like, overlaid with this window screen. Or she has a video on our YouTube channel where she's running towards a desktop background that is, like, displaying, a peaceful landscape, and she's trying to reach that peaceful landscape but is unable to as the landscape keeps moving away from her. Although she's kind of stopped uploading on her YouTube channel, and uploads have become pretty infrequent. Mr. Nosybonk. Mr. Nosybonk is a character from a British children's show called Jigsaw. No, I'm not joking, that's the actual name. This is a show that's sort of structured like a game show, kind of, where each episode has a word and the audience has to figure out what the word is. And throughout the episode, they'll reveal what it is one letter at a time. Both of the YouTubers who I watched talk about Mr. Nosybonk and, by extension, this show, noted how the show seems to think that children are idiots, and really just stays focused on each letter for way too long, and really just tries to nail home the point of what the letter is, even when it should be really obvious to most kids. Now, in addition to the main word guessing aspect of the show, there were several different sketches they would perform, all of them relating to the word or the letters in the word, which had a cast of recurring characters, one of which being pretty much the only one even remembers this show at all, Mr. Nosybonk. And before I even talk about Nosybonk himself, I do want to actually bring that up that no one seems to give a shit about the show. It ran for 6 seasons, but there is barely any archival of it, and most of it is lost media. There's hardly any evidence of this show even existing at all, which, if anything, just adds to the creep factor of Mr. Nosybonk. So enough stalling. Who is Nosybonk? Well, he's this character I have on screen. He wears a fancy suit and tie and a nightmarish white mask with bulging eyes, a just massive twisted smile, and a really, really long nose. It looks less like the mask a character in a children's show would wear, and much more like the mask a serial unaliver would wear in a horror series. He never talks, and all of his sketches are silent, though there is one sketch of him singing. And with the exception of that singing sketch, almost all of them are set to this bouncy, trumpet-heavy piece of music called A Hippo Named Herbert. Now, most of these sketches aren't too disturbing in their own right, and would be probably fine if you included any character other than Nosybonk, but there are a few I want to bring up. There's one where he has a family of Nosybonks all wearing the same disturbing mask. There's one where there's a baby that this woman has in a stroller next to him, and that baby also has a Nosybonk mask. Why are there more than one of these masks? One is disturbing enough. There's one sketch where he's running from a police officer, and eventually he ends up getting caught up in this sack race with a bunch of kids. And at the end of the race, he just points at the cop, and all the children just go swarming towards the cop. So I guess we can add mind control of children to his list of abilities. And there's another sketch where he also controls children, where I think the word of the episode is chains, and the teacher is writing the word chains on a board, and Nosybonk runs up to the window of the school, and the kids see him, and they all just run out of the classroom and then run into a field where they're all interlocking hands with one another, forming a human chain, which then forms the word chains from a bird's eye view of it. And lastly, there's a sketch where he plants some nosegay seeds. Yes, I'm serious. That is the name of what he plants, and is the name of an actual plant. Except instead of growing actual nosegay flowers, they grow these phallic nose-like protrusions that burst out from the ground. Now, because of how freaky this character is, people started creating sketches where they created a even more disturbing version of his mask that basically takes all the features that made the original one disturbing and enhances them to an even worse level, and used it to create sketches where they treat him as though he actually is a serial unaliver. There's one sketch where he's he sneaks into someone's room and knifes them. There's one sketch where he's rearranging magnets on a refrigerator and arranges them into "I will eat your soul." And perhaps most traumatizing, one where Nosy Bonk makes pancakes, but then he decorates them with a human face. And then at the end of the video, we see a skinned human head lying on the table. And it definitely doesn't help that all these videos are set to the same exact music as the original Nosy Bonk sketches, a hippo named Herbert. And perhaps the most ironic thing about this whole ordeal is that Mr. Nosybonk's parody sketches that depict him as this serial unaliver are all more popular than the actual clips of him from the show, and easier to find than the clips of him from the show. 911 call 050311 record 1/Watcher. Watcher is a playlist created by the YouTuber Andrew Nias Stunts. And the video title I mentioned before that is the first video in this 30 video long playlist. The playlist follows these two people who are presumably a married couple that live inside of an apartment. And they notice that there's this guy that's just standing outside of the apartment, just staring up at their window every night. And they call 911 to try and get him arrested for stalking, but no one comes. Eventually, one of them leaves their apartment to go see what the dude's deal is and if they can get rid of the Watcher. And while the man goes down to get rid of the Watcher, the woman briefly turns the camera away from the window. And when she looks back, the Watcher's gone, and the man gets down there and he finds no one. And so he goes back up to the apartment, and the woman turns her camera away from the window, but then they look outside and he's there again. Eventually, the man goes back down to deal with the Watcher again, except this time, the Watcher is there, and the man brings a GUN and tries to shoot at the Watcher, but the bullet doesn't do anything. Eventually, some responders finally come to the building, but only because they heard the GUN shot, and not because of the calls. In fact, they have no records of the nameless couple in the apartment calling them at all. Then they find the bullets that they fired from the GUN inside of a plastic bag on the fire escape next to their window, and then they start receiving threatening notes, presumably from the Watcher. And it finally gets to be too much for the protagonists, so they decide to put an end to the Watcher once and for all. And by that I mean they move to a new house, they see the Watcher one more time, and then he's gone. It's pretty anticlimactic. In fact, this entire series is not very good, I'm not gonna lie. I appreciate it for being short, but the woman's acting wasn't great, and we never really get any answers as to what the Watcher was doing. Like, it's never really explained, nor do we get any real escalation aside from him sending a couple notes as to why he's actually a threat. And again, it's just dealt with so anticlimactically. Flashing lights warning for this entry. The most viewed video on Maruosa's YouTube channel is a music video, with the music being made by him, of course, and the visuals of the video being created by an artist named Sekintani La Nori Hiro. And it features these like flesh doll creatures all dancing around in this demonic hellscape with giant robots and everyone getting like blown apart. And it's very hard to make out what anything is, but it's because everything is kind of the same fleshy color, and there's this constant flashing red light everywhere, and the camera is constantly changing. It very much matches up with the style of music Maruosa goes with. Most of the other videos on his channel fall under a playlist called Extreme Music Graffiti on the Back of Ads, which is where he takes various ads from America and Japan, and he speeds them up and then creates a cybergrind / breakcore song to go over the ad and match up with what's happening on screen. And if the ad already has music associated with it, he creates a cybergrind / breakcore remix of said song. Maruosa. Maruosa is a Japanese breakcore and cybergrind music artist. And for those who don't know, breakcore is a music genre characterized by fast, chopped up, and screwed with drum samples that's typically like intense and hardcore. Whereas cybergrind is basically the most extreme subgenre of metal that's basically as extreme as it can possibly be without it going into noise music, and is characterized by like really distorted guitars and fast drums and heavily processed vocals that are very hard to hear, and often contains lyrics about technology and like dystopia. hence the name Cybergrind. Cool Guy Has a Chill Day. This was a video uploaded in 2009 in which a mask created for the purposes of an art project is worn by one of the video's creators. Well, less worn and more attached to like a stick that he stuck up above his head while wearing a hoodie so that he looks taller than he is. And then he just walks around and he has a chill day. He walks around while some jazz music plays in the background. Kids point at him and shout, "Wow, it's Cool Guy." He walks through the store just pointing at random people, just having a chill day. He goes to the playground, he chases some children around, he walks through the sewers, he dances on a car, he dances in the streets, he dances near a telephone pole, and he just has a chill day. And then 5 years later, the creators of Cool Guy Has a Chill Day released a series of videos teasing the return of Cool Guy, and this led up to Cool Guy Has a Chill Day 2. Except instead of having Cool Guy, this has a new guy called Funk Guy who has a completely different face that isn't anywhere near as disturbing as Cool Guys. I mean, Cool Guys wasn't super disturbing to begin with, but you get what I'm saying. And he dances around while playing the saxophone while some funk plays in the background. But then halfway through the video, Cool Guy assassinates him with a sniper rifle, buries him in the ground, and literally dances on his grave. And around 2 years ago, they created Cool Guy 1.5, in which they teased the return of Funk Guy with like Cool Guy like using his body parts as to like recreate them into like a Frankenstein. But that's besides the point. I think that Cool Guy Has a Chill Day 2 is commentary because Cool Guy Has a Chill Day is the most well-known video that channel ever produced. Hell, I don't even remember what the channel was. In fact, I'm gonna look it up now. What was it? Cool Guy Has a Chill Day. Lonely Boy NID. Or IND. Yeah, that's what it was. Lonely Boy IND. They'll forever be stuck being known for Cool Guy Has a Chill Day and nothing else. So, in a sense, I think that Cool Guy Has a Chill Day 2 is sort of commentary on this. Funk Guy represents them trying to do something new and interesting. And then that just gets shot down by Cool Guy because they'll only ever be known for Cool Guy, so they can't do anything new. Or I'm just reading too much into it. That's also a possibility. Creepy Horses. 2 horses. Doug Garth Williams. This is a cursed commercial advertising the 2 Horses beauty salon in Montreal, Canada. The advertisement shows a man who goes into his barn/stable and tries to find his horses, but when he gets there, he finds 2 women instead of horses. And then the women turn around and reveal hyper-realistic, humanoid, horse-esque hybrid faces. And then they make these weird groaning noises, and then the man notices that he's holding a tool used to like tame horses by bringing them pain. I don't know what it's actually called. I think it's like a horsewhip, but I'm not sure what the official name of it is. But he drops it, and then he runs away as the horses creepily approach him. And then the logo comes up and is like, "Hey, come to our beauty salon." Terrible mall commercial. I'm just gonna play this one in its entirety.
These tales for back to school. Denim, haircut, backpacks, come get your backpack.
Boots and pants.
New shoes,
Get yourself an outfit.
denim,
Boots and pants.
Haircut.
new shoes. So get yourself back to school with these tales.
Haircut.
Ace Family Phallic Lollipop Controversy. The Ace Family was this group of shitty prankster YouTubers that I stopped hearing anything about like 3 years ago, I think. I don't think anyone really cares about them anymore. But about 5 years ago, they had a controversy because one of the members of the family took his girlfriend's little sister, who was like 6, I think, at the time of the video, to Spencer's. And they went to the back section of Spencer's where there was a rainbow-colored phallic lollipop, which she wanted because she just saw rainbow colors and didn't know what it looked like. And then he's like, "Well, I have to buy it for her. She really wants it. She says she's gonna steal it if I don't buy it for her. I have to let the 6-year-old decide, guys. I'm not responsible for this." And then he buys it. The store clerk somehow doesn't see anything wrong with selling a phallic lollipop to a 6-year-old. And then they buy it and leave the store. Thankfully, it at least cuts out before she starts licking it. And obviously, they face major backlash for this. Although, I do want to say, they did a fairly good job as far as prank channels are concerned, because if that's the biggest controversy they got in, then they're practically good people compared to all the other family prank channels. You know, I mean, at least they didn't at least they didn't commit any direct child abuse. Vitali's TV. Vitali's TV was a YouTuber who initially, before doing YouTube, was a corn star, or at least he tried to be one, but he was unable to harden himself. And so his career as a horn star failed. And he went to YouTube, where he became a prank YouTuber. And his pranks generally fell into 2 categories. Your typical try to do something really extreme so you can clickbait the video and get the audience to watch it shit, which included interrupting like sports games and like running into the stadium, and ended up getting him arrested multiple times, and his gold digging pranks. Gold digging pranks were like this trend on YouTube back in like 2014. And he's the one who started it. Basically, what you do with the gold digging prank is you pay a woman to dress in skimpy clothing and have her walk up to you, and then you make some shitty dialogue and have her say, "Oh my gosh, you're ugly. I don't want to be with you." And then you show her a rich car or rich wallet, or just show her something that proves you are rich, and then she say, "Oh, now I want you," and you're like, "No, you are gold digger," and then that's it. That's the video. And then you try and pass it off as real to your moronic fan base, which is probably just children. Eventually, another prank YouTuber, exposed the fact that most of his pranks were fake, as well as the fact that he had assaulted a woman in the past. And this resulted in him losing a lot of his subscribers and a lot of views on his YouTube channel. So he created a new website called Vitali Uncensored, which was basically a horn website in which he pays girls an exposure, and tried to use that to make money, and used his YouTube channel primarily to promote Vitali Uncensored. And the videos that he then made on his channel became increasingly desperate in an attempt to get people to Vitali Uncensored, like him breaking into sports stadiums, but not just him breaking into sports stadiums, him manipulating his girlfriend and his mom into breaking into sports stadiums to promote his channel. And the last video uploaded to his channel 3 years ago was of him climbing the Great Pyramid of Giza for what he claims was to raise awareness for the Australia wildfires. He also beat up a random woman in the middle of the street for no reason. And as of recently, he's announced a new website he's creating called Vitali Girls, which is supposed to be a competitor to OnlyFans. Hey, this is me coming back in while editing, and I forgot to mention that he climbed the Hollywood sign. I don't know how I forgot that, but I'm saying it here. ALMAO. This was a meme in the early 2010s where people would just caption images of stereotypical LGM aliens with ALMAO. And it culminated in a video being made on YouTube, which featured several of these LGM aliens dancing around on like a disco floor with like flashing lights and lightning flying around them, to a remix of the song Macarena, but with the lyrics changed to be about the aliens from the XCOM franchise, and replacing Macarena with like the Macarena with LMAO. Unwind with the Sweeties. This is a public access TV show, and for those who don't know, public access TV shows are like this thing where they can be made by pretty much anyone, so long as that person then submits their show to the local network, and then the local network is by law required to broadcast it for free on the local channels. Though as big, greedy television companies take up more and more of the world's TV networks, and as social media sort of replaces the need for TV at all every single day, public access TV shows have kind of faded out and become nowhere near as commonplace as they once were. There's a whole world of just obscure, lost, insane shit that you can find in the sphere of public access TV. But for this entry, we're specifically talking about the show Unwind with the Sweeties. This was a show that began airing in 1991, but I can't really find out when it stopped airing, at least not the exact date. I think it stopped airing sometime in the late early 2000s or the early 2010s, but don't quote me on that. The show features two main characters who are a man and woman that are married both in the show and in real life. The man wears a lime green mask that covers everything except his eyes and mouth, and the woman wears a yellow mask that covers everything but her eyes and mouth. They both wear a pair of sunglasses with realistic human eyes on the side that's facing the camera. They both wear buck teeth in like their mouths, and they each wear like a different wig every episode. And neither one of these two characters have names. They simply refer to each other as Sweetie, hence the name. Now, the actual contents of the show were pretty much unknown for a long time. This was because there was little to no archival of the show, and the only like real clip of it that existed online were two clips uploaded by the official Unwind with the Sweeties YouTube channel, a channel which I got confirmation from that they are indeed the real Sweeties who made the show, and not just like a fan channel archiving it. In one of these two clips, they go to like some sort of like store and just talk about ordering something, while the other clip is much more bizarre and the one that's more well known. In it, Mr. Sweetie is reading a like lewd magazine, and while reading it, he like enters this fantasy trance where he sees Mrs. Sweetie like on a bed dressed as Marilyn Monroe, just continually like flopping around and changing her position constantly while talking seductively. And then he gets snapped out of his fantasy by Mrs. Sweetie, who like calls him out for it. Now, recently, and by recently, I mean as of like the last month or last 2 months, the official Unwind with the Sweeties YouTube channel has begun re-uploading clips from the various different episodes of the show, usually only 1 to like 3 minutes long, and has been uploading them like fairly consistently at a rate of about 1 a day. Though, weirdly enough, they only get like a couple hundred views each, even though I feel like this would be like a major thing for the lost media community, considering how much of the show was considered lost media before this. Most of the show's sketches show the Sweeties in front of the same wall, in front of the same table, which has like just a bunch of different stuff on it, which varies between the episodes, and has loud nature ambience playing in the background. Though there are also some episodes where the Sweeties go out into the nearby town or go on a trip to New York City, and there are even some like animated segments about the characters Bunny Boy and Pepper. Most of the sketches are really nonsensical, and you're rarely ever going to like have any idea how any of them are going to end. They can be anything from the aforementioned Mr. Sweetie having a fantasy to them both blowing bubbles silently when one of them just starts making animal noises for seemingly no reason, to a random image of Barbie just appears in the middle of the screen and then they break the fourth wall talking about it as Barbie having a cameo, to there being this character who displays the show in his head and they call him Mr. Video Head, and then he never appears again, to the aforementioned Pepper and Bunny Boy segments that seemingly just come up out of nowhere, to Mr. Sweetie putting his head behind a fish tank and then making like noises that makes it sound like he's trying to talk underwater, to the characters randomly bursting out into song in the middle of an argument. A lot of people have called this show unnerving or uncanny due to the way both of the Sweeties appear combined with the randomness of the show. And I think the fact that it was a public cable show and almost all of the re-recordings of it are low quality in terms of both the visual aspect and the sound. In fact, most of the uploads on the YouTube channel have their audio playing out of only one of the two speakers. All sort of contributes to make it feel even more unnerving and like some sort of lost, cursed TV show that you were never meant to find. Lastly, before I conclude this entry, I want to talk about their blog. So, Unwind with the Sweeties had an official blog where basically the characters would write the blog posts in character. These blog posts ended with the show and then randomly created one more post 10 years later in 2020 and then stopped using the blog again until, well, actually, they just stopped using it completely and haven't used it even after they've started re-uploading things to their YouTube channel. But the reason I bring this up is because their last blog post prior to the 10-year hiatus talks about them going on a trip and Mr. Sweetie getting injured, and then shows an image of a mutilated, unalived body to accompany this, saying he looks like that. And some YouTubers, I'm not going to call out any names, it was Blame It on Jorge, said that this was a real unalived body and called the show creators out for being disrespectful. However, after doing some research on this, I would like to say that he is actually wrong. This was not a real unalived body, and the creators of the show were not being disrespectful. This was merely the album cover for the album Finger Cuffing the Beheaded by the band Christian Corpse Mutilation, which, if you couldn't tell, is a metal band. There's also a second image of a body, but it's a skeleton, and it's just like a half buried in the ground skeleton. And considering both A, the fact that the first image was not a real body, and B, the fact that it's a half buried skeleton, I'm going to make an educated guess that it's probably fake as well. The strangest video ever. You guys remember Cyrac? I talked about him way back in like tier 3. Like the first part of tier 3. Yeah, this was one of the first videos he ever made, although he hasn't uploaded it to his YouTube channel, and it was rather re-uploaded by someone else. The video is simply a compilation of fairly bizarre GIFs created by Cyrac, set to a song. Some of these GIFs include a cat pushing a button that electrocutes a mouse, a bus eating people on a road as it drives down it, Queen Elizabeth but with 4 legs crawling through a city, a carriage that transforms into Queen Elizabeth and then blasts someone with laser beams from her eyes and then turns back into a carriage, a truck moving with legs instead of wheels, Godzilla wearing lipstick and looking at its reflection in a tower, Godzilla skateboarding and then falling down and hitting his balls, a baby spitting its organs out and then sucking them back in, a cow milking another cow directly into its cereal bowl, a tower hula hooping, sentient pipes on a factory like puffing up and down, a tree using a chainsaw on a man, a cow skiing past a toll booth, a dude with just a really large mouth for his face and nothing else on his face, a baby being flung out of a woman and then being pulled back in as though its umbilical cord were a yo-yo, a baby running away from a doctor with like a pair of scissors trying to cut the umbilical cord and pulling its mother along with it. And that's about all I remember. Run for the Cube. Run for the Cube is a YouTuber who started off by making pronunciation guides for various words. However, he has an extremely weird accent, and as these videos went on, his accent got weirder and weirder. Eventually, he transitioned to also making unboxing videos, which on the surface appeared to be normal, but once you actually watch the video, you'll see that he uses his strange accent in those videos as well to describe whatever's going on in the unboxing videos. And he also just kind of acts eccentric, like he has an obsession with cutting open things and trying to find their brains. And fairly recently, he's also started doing travel vlogs, but again, with his accent. And his accent really cannot just be described by me explaining it, so I'm just going to play a clip of him talking, and I think you'll get the gist.
Hello, this is Run for the QB. Today we have a Gili Bili Pete Rat Gumai Kandai. Gili Bili Pete Rat Gumai Kandai. Let's like it open so he can breathe. Fresh air. Pete Rat, time to come here livey. Escapity pataki.
WTF Japan? Seriously? This is a YouTube channel which re-uploads various Japanese commercials and music videos that are particularly strange as a way of archiving weird aspects of Japanese pop culture. Some of the videos on this channel include humans with wheels for their limbs that are like racing against each other, chocolate products that they have like a mascot that's a bird, but the mascot is followed around by versions of them with bird feet and a Japanese comedian's head pasted onto them. A clip of an anime where there's several anthropomorphic cowgirls mooing as they get milked. Someone trying to kiss their girlfriend only to realize that they are actually a monster and accidentally ate the upper half of the girlfriend. A demon cursing a woman to be transformed into a cow, which is as disturbing as it sounds. This anthropomorphic dog dude trying to play baseball with kids. There's this a squid trying to wrestle with some humans. And I don't mean that as an innuendo. I mean, he's actually like doing pro wrestling. There's the poo genie. You guess what that is. And there's like this one music video where the girl is like picking her nose and combining the boogers into this massive ball that then turns into like a fetus of boogers. And then there's like this couple that's like transferring an egg between their mouths. There's this dude that has the power to shoot bananas out of his nose. And there's even an advertisement with Nicolas Cage, which actually isn't that weird as far as Nicolas Cage goes. The YouTube channel stopped uploading around 7 years ago. There's also one advertisement for sausages, and the comment section has been turned off on this video and on none of the others. And the commercial involved several small children dancing and making faces with their eyes up and their mouths open in a circular shape. And maybe I'm just dirty-minded, but the fact that the comment section has been disabled on this one makes me think that commenters were possibly being weird about it. So that's a little disturbing. Sebastian's Voodoo. This is another 3D animation school project, which is about this very dirty-looking, shirtless voodoo master who has a bunch of sentient voodoo dolls, which he unalives when he stabs them through the heart with a needle. And one of these dolls manages to escape the hook he's on, and he tries to free another doll. However, the voodoo master picks up the second doll and starts to try and stab him with a needle. The first voodoo doll sees this and tries stabbing himself in various different locations throughout his body to make the voodoo master feel too much pain and be unable to stab the second voodoo doll. But the voodoo master perseveres through the pain and manages to get the needle close enough to the second voodoo doll that the first voodoo doll is forced to sacrifice himself by stabbing the needle into his heart, unaliving both him and the voodoo master. The Sandman, 1992. This is a short stop-motion animation. When you first look at it, you're probably reminded of The Nightmare Before Christmas, and that would be because this is made by a man named Paul Barry who actually worked on The Nightmare Before Christmas. The animation is about this small Victorian child who, as he goes to sleep, has his house entered by the Sandman. Now, for those who don't know, the Sandman is a mythological figure who basically was medieval people's explanations for why there's all kinds of gunk in your eyes when you wake up, and they say like he'll throw sand in your eyes, literally. But some versions of the story, as a way of getting kids to go to bed, say that if you open your eyes while he's sanding them, he'll take your eyes out. And that's what this animation shows. As first, the Sandman stalks around the house. Then there's a fake out where the kid's mother opens the door and the kid thinks it's the Sandman, but it's actually just his mother. But then once his mother leaves, the Sandman materializes, and he bounces all around the room trying to get the kid to open his eyes. And eventually he gives up on that and starts, sprinkling sand into the kid's eyes. And then the kid opens his eyes up, and the Sandman claws them out, though we only get to see this in the shadow on the wall. And then the Sandman flies to his home on the moon, where he has several little Sandman babies, which a detail I like here is that the Sandman has like a crescent-like face, where he has a really pointy forehead and a really pointy chin, and they use this to make the Sandman babies look like birds and look like they have beaks that way. And he feeds the little boy's eyes into the mouths of the Sandman babies. Well, the camera cuts back to the little boy and shows him now completely eyeless at the very end of the animation. Zoe Laverne. Zoe Laverne was a YouTuber who initially got famous on Musical.ly.
She got famous there when she was only 15 years old, and this resulted in her being bullied by a lot of her classmates and having to be taken out and put in a private school when she went to high school. But despite this, she became one of the biggest TikTokers, musicaliers, I guess, on the platform. Eventually, she began dating a boy named Cody Orlove. The two of them had a YouTube channel together where they did, typical YouTube family vlog prank channel 2016, type shit. However, eventually the two of them would break up, with Cody accusing Zoe of cheating. However, over time, these accusations eventually worsened, with Cody soon claiming that Zoe was outright abusive toward him, and attempted to assault him twice, once attempting to force him to kiss her, and the other time attempting to forcibly remove his pants. In the wake of this revelation, Zoe's fanbase turned against her, and it became revealed just how much of an abusive, manipulative egomaniac she really was. With one of the things that comes to mind, two of the things that come to mind being her using audio of an argument where Cody grabbed her arm to try and prove that he had physically abused her to a much worse point than what he had actually done. And the other being when she told him that her mom was abusive towards her, then he called her mom out on social media, and then her mom got mad at him and Zoe's fanbase attacked him for it. After this whole controversy with the two of them breaking up and Zoe's true nature being revealed, her entire fan base was pretty much gone and her career was basically ruined. She then had two minor controversies where she first said the N-word and then she threw a tantrum about Charli D'Amelio being really popular on TikTok and being more popular than her. But then she had an actually minor problem. And by that, I mean she groomed a minor. Oh, that's terrible. I shouldn't have said that. But she began having a relationship with a 13-year-old boy who was a fan of her content that she used her position of being a content creator he liked to manipulate him into being in a relationship with her. And just to be clear, at this point, she's 19. So she definitely should have known better. Now, the two of them did do TikToks, which were sexually suggestive, but Charli D'Amelio claimed that nothing worse than that happened. Then footage of the two of them kissing came out, which, while certainly worse, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. There hasn't been anything of her actually, doing anything with him that has came out yet, and the victim has not claimed that she did anything like that with him, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not defending her here, I'm just saying that she wasn't as bad as it could have been. Now, since then, she has gone to therapy and she's got a new boyfriend, and she recently became pregnant. And some people who are kind of obsessed with her drama have said that, have suggested that maybe her baby was from, maybe she got impregnated by the 13-year-old. I don't know. I don't think this is true. There doesn't seem to be any real evidence towards this, and as messed up and bad as she is, I don't think she'd go so far as to actually do something like that. Alien spider creature caught on video in Russia climbing on building. I mean, the title's pretty self-explanatory. It's a giant spider-like creature that appears to sort of be made out of flesh. Kind of reminds me of a Trevor Henderson monster, and it's climbing on some apartment complex, and someone is filming it. Do you really need me to say it's fake? I mean, it is. It's fake. But to the creator of the video's credit, it is actually really, really convincingly made. They do a good job of photoshopping it. And it actually moves quite a bit, and I'm impressed that they managed to make it move as much as it does while still making it seem realistic.
The giant enemy spider.
Screaming cat. Okay, what the fuck do you mean by screaming cat? Are you aware of how many videos there are on YouTube of cats, much less videos of cats screaming? How am I supposed to find out what this video is? Honestly, people in the comments, please help me if you know what this is. The best, what I think this is what I think this entry is most likely referring to is this video I'm showing here, which is a cat called Thurston Waffles, even though there are no videos of him just called Cat Screaming or Screaming Cat. But it is the cat that would go on to be used in the woman pointing and yelling at cat meme. Amanda Todd. Amanda Todd was an 11-year-old girl with ADD who wanted to become famous on YouTube. Because of her naivety, she was manipulated by a man online into sharing explicit photos of herself. The man then used these photos to blackmail her and eventually shared these photos with her entire school, leading to her getting bullied in the years that followed, to the point where she eventually had to move schools. At this new school, though, she started dating a boy who already had a girlfriend, to the point where the two of them even, did the thing with one another despite them being both minors. Oh, I don't like this. And then the boy's girlfriend came back, and basically she told everyone that she had slept with him, and the entire school got mad at her and bullied her and essentially SLUT shamed her. And this of course got worse when the man who had found explicit photo, who had coerced her into giving him explicit photos of herself, also sent those images to the members of this new school. So she had to move schools again after she attempted to unalive herself using bleach, but thankfully survived and was rescued by her father. And so she went to a third school where once again her photos were shared by the same man, and she was unable to take the pain that this man had caused her. And despite uploading a video where she said she would try and stay strong and persevere despite the problems that this man had caused her and the tragedy he had inflicted upon her life, she committed self-game 1 week later. And this was a massive case because this was one of the first times when people really woke up to how dangerous the internet can truly be for children. And of course, all of the pieces of shit that bullied her were flooding the comment section with, "Oh, we were so nice. I'm so sorry she passed away." Police barely did anything in their investigation, typical. So Anonymous had to do all the hard work. They accidentally ended up doxing an innocent man first, and were unable to find the actual culprit. And that was because the actual culprit was Dutch and was arrested by police in the Netherlands. And of course, they found that he had used multiple accounts to harass multiple different women and girls. I should just say girls. He harassed multiple underage girls and did the same shit he did with Amanda Todd to those girls as well. And it was also discovered that he had loads and loads of cheese pizza on his PC, and that he was part of this ring called the Daily Capper, which were a group of surprisingly in the open predators, I guess, that all liked finding. They basically coercing under. They basically coercing underage girls into giving pictures of themselves the same way the Dutch man had. And then they'd have this show where there's a character from Distraction News that they manipulated. They edited her to basically sound like she was saying what they had a robotic voice read out, and they'd have that robotic voice read out about all the underage girls that they had capped, and they made it into a game show where they gave out prizes to people who could get the most caps. And this wasn't under some underground dark web ring thing. No, this was this shit was on YouTube. This shit was on fucking YouTube. I mean, granted, this was the 2010s, and people didn't really understand the internet. We're still very much figuring out what to do, and YouTube staff was a part of those people that had no idea how to regulate their platform. But still, how does shit like this stay out in the open? Either way, though, that guy was arrested around 2 years after Amanda Todd's unalivement, and he ended up getting a 10-year prison sentence in the Netherlands in 2016.
And because his crimes also were enacted in Canada despite him living in the Netherlands, he was also, only about a year ago, sentenced to 13 years in Canadian prisons. And I think those two sentences add on top of each other, but I'm not sure how prison sentences work. Either way, it's way too short of a sentence. Persephone Number Station. This is a video that shows a distorted grayscale image of an Asian woman that's sort of waving around with her eyes censored by black pixels. And in the background, it plays like reversed audio that, if you re-reverse it, sounds like it's saying several numbers. Now, unlike the Swedish Rhapsody number station that I talked about earlier, this is not an actual number station. Rather, this was created for the Lost ARG, which was an ARG involving the Lost TV series. And it played a very small part in that ARG. No one really cared that much about it, and they only cared about the ARG itself and not really this one tiny part. That was until several years later when people discovered this disturbing website called NREX, which seems to describe a disease very similar to cancer, but it's not cancer, it's NREX, which is a made up, non existent disease. And there's a photo on this website that looks very similar to the woman in the Persephone Number Station video. Clicking on this photo will cause the page to become distorted, and the more times you click on it, the more distorted it becomes. If you navigate around the website, you can find a tab titled NREX, and on this tab there's a large blue key and a link that says bypass login. And clicking on this takes you to a page that has some distorted text that says, "Wake up, Tyler, the dream is over," and the Persephone Number Station video. Now, this website was not an ARG. It was just a little spooky one-off thing that just some guy made, and I will get back to this website in a minute. But before I get to that, there was one other thing that this video was used in. So, shortly after NREX, people found out about NREX and then forgot about it, there was an ARG on Tumblr called Sexy Girl Max 15. And this ARG was about an angel that was trying to help a terminally ill girl and was stuck in the internet. And Sexy Girl Max 15 was a corn spam bot. I said corn with a C. It's a spam bot that on first glance just looks to be an ordinary spam bot, but if you read its messages, you can see that it's a lot deeper than that, and it's a lot more cryptic than your average bot. And from there, that takes you to the rest of the ARG, and you find out that the angel was stuck inside of that account. Yada yada yada. It's a pretty impressive ARG considering it was made by two 15-year-olds, and it actually ended surprisingly. Which what the fuck? That's not what ARGs are supposed to do. You're supposed to just make them go on indefinitely and then end them when people lose interest with no satisfying conclusion. If I've learned anything from this iceberg. But the reason this relates to NREX is because the Persephone Number Station video was once again used in this ARG, and not just the video, but the entire NREX website was used. Now, the two girls that made Sexy Girl Max 15 had nothing to do with the creator of NREX. They just saw a creepy website and decided to put it in their ARG, which is really weird ARG inception here. Sexy Girl Max 15 stole the Persephone Number Station video from the NREX website, which stole the Persephone Number Station video from the Lost ARG. Now, after NREX gained some new popularity thanks to the Sexy Girl Max 15 ARG, the YouTuber Rainbot interviewed the creator of the website NREX, and he basically said that it was created as little more than a in-joke for his friends, because there was this crazy guy that kept emailing them nonsensical emails with the word NREX in them. So he created this website where he basically took the medical description of cancer, replaced the word cancer with NREX, and then ran it through Google Translate to screw it up. And that's basically what the medical description is. And then he just programmed some spooky stuff into the website, stole the Persephone Number Station because he thought it would be creepy, and then put the website together from there. And there wasn't really any ARG beyond that website. It was just isolated to the website and nothing else until Sexy Girl Max 15 came along. Now, while I was doing research for this, I found this playlist called Weird Discovery, possibly related to enrix.angelfire.com, which was the website. And by the way, it's gone, doesn't work anymore. And this playlist has videos from a YouTube channel called Enrix Corporation Technology and the Mind, which is like it has 12 subscribers. Most of the videos have like less than 100 views. And with the only exception being the first video. And what's weird about this is these videos they don't seem to be related to the NREX ARG at all, but then why do they use the word NREX? They seem to be about something completely different. That being, they're about like people uploading human consciousness to the internet and accidentally inventing like AI that wants to unalive everyone. But then the first video is also about like an EAS warning about like zombies. It doesn't make much sense. I don't know how that's related to the rest of the ARG, and I probably never will because the last video on this YouTube channel was uploaded 3 years ago. It's also like very unprofessionally made, and the people who are reading the scripts in these videos don't like they. How do I describe this? You can very much tell that they're reading off of a script, and there's even some like mistakes that they make that are left in the videos. But if they are reading off scripts, then that begs the question, what scripts are they reading off of? It's definitely not something that was on inrex.com. I mean, .angelfire.com, whatever. And then the other intriguing thing about this playlist I found is not only does it contain videos from Enrix Corporation Technology, whatever, but it also contains a video titled Persephone Number Station Family, which has that woman's face from Persephone Number Station, except not grayscale. And they're pasted onto it's 3 of them, and they're pasted onto a green screen of like some mountainous landscape. And one of them is wearing a hat, and another is wearing a red bow. And there's like some Japanese song playing in the background, which I'd imagine is like the Japanese version of the Finger Family song. And the comments are turned off on that video.
Also, a little fun fact here, the person who made the NREX website was the same person who made the Grifter. Remember the video from the 3rd tier? Ultimate Muscle Roller Legend. This is a bizarre animation that features 2 action figures based off of the wrestler Billy Harrington, who are clad in nothing but their underwear, where one of them is formed like a vehicle and the other is like riding on top of him. And the 2 of them are giving chase after a Vocaloid who's riding in a mech from the series JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Throughout the chase, the 2 Billies morph, where like one of them becomes the vehicle and the other will ride on top of him, and vice versa. And eventually, at the end of the animation, one of the 2 Billies pulls down his underwear to reveal that in place of those parts, he has the face of the baby Akasan, which was a popular meme when this video came out, that being in like 2012. And the baby like launches a cannonball at the mech that blows it up. And then the two action figures like turn into like the friendship wheel from Kirby's Star Allies, and they ride off on the road. Creeper in My Apartment. This video shows a man who is the creator of the video talking about how he noticed that like food and drink is going missing from his fridge, and he confronted his girlfriend about it, and she had no explanation other than that it definitely wasn't her. So he bought a camera and he put it in his house to try and find out what's going on. And the rest of the video is the footage from this camera. It shows a woman who the creator confirms is not his girlfriend, and she climbs out of either a vent or a cabinet or just like some sort of hole near the ceiling. Maybe leads to the attic, I don't know. And she climbs down onto a table. She positions a stool so that she can climb down from the table to the stool to the ground without making any noise. Then she walks over to the fridge, pulls out a carton of milk, drinks directly from the carton, pisses in the sink. Then the dude wakes up, and she quickly climbs her way back up to the hole in the wall, but does it silently. Then the dude comes into the room. He goes over to the fridge, pulls out the carton of milk, pours himself a glass, drinks it, puts it back in the fridge, and runs back to bed. Then the girl comes back out of her hole. She gets some food from the fridge, eats it, closes the fridge, and then she climbs back up to the hole in the wall, repositioning the stool where it originally was in the process. And in case you're wondering, yes, this is fake, but
It is fairly believable as far as these types of videos go, considering there isn't really any supernatural element to it. But the fact that he didn't make any follow-ups to this pretty much disproves the fact that it was real at all. Look at the clown. This is a video created by the YouTuber Ronald Yoder American Classics. It's narrated in a text-to-speech voice, which explains that it's a therapy program for his child who's afraid of clowns, and he's going to make his child watch it 4 times every day until his child is no longer afraid of clowns. The rest of the video from this point on is basically just a slideshow of images of clowns that progressively get creepier and creepier as the video goes on, while distorted carnival music plays in the background. And that same text-to-speech voice continually says, "Look at the clown," every time a new image appears. Last chance to look at the clown, Hector. While this isn't technically on the Iceberg, I think that it's also worth bringing up the YouTube channel Ronald Yoder American Classics that created this video, because it's arguably just as interesting as the video. And it's kind of funny that he's only known for this clown video. In fact, if you go to his channel, the channel trailer is like him basically saying, "Oh, you probably hear from that damned clown video. You know I have like other videos you can watch, right?" And the rest of the videos on his channel are similar to Look at the Clown, where they're a text-to-speech voice narrating a slideshow for the most part. But in terms of content, most of them seem to be sort of like dark humor that's describing videos from the perspective of this like abusive father, describing strange situations like his kid becoming possessed by the ghost of David the Gnome, or reviewing movies except they're not actually reviews at all, and are like him comedically describing the experience of watching the movie and absurd situations that came from that. Like in his Jumanji review, he talks about like there was a guy there that was a Guns N' Roses fan that got upset that the entire movie wasn't a Guns N' Roses performance. And despite what I said earlier about these videos appearing to come from the perspective of an abusive parent, it also kind of feels like they're made by a child, but like they have a lot of misspellings and weird usage of grammar in various videos. And I don't think this was unintentional. I think he's intentionally trying to both sound like an abusive parent and like a child at the same time, both for comedic effect. One for dark humor comedic effect, and the other for like ironic comedic effect. Like, oh, ha ha ha, his child can't spell haha, that kind of humor. I don't know what you'd call that. I guess that'd be ironic. The Stalking Vampire. This is a series of videos created by the Japanese small film production channel called Squash Films. The story is about this dude who lives in an apartment who like is just really obsessed with this one girl, and he's so obsessed with her that he turns himself into a mummy, I guess. And because of that, this curses the apartment that he lives in. And the Stalking Vampire, which is a monster that used to be sealed up by this family of samurais, but then one samurai was training and he accidentally freed the vampire, start attacking the house and trying to turn everyone in it into stalking vampires. And so the inhabitants of the house and the samurai have to work together to defeat the stalking vampires. And as for what the stalking vampires are, they're just dudes who are in their underwear and covered in like white powder. Yeah, it's not a horror series. It's a comedy series, and they don't even try to make the stalking vampires scary in any way. Whenever the stalking vampires bite someone, that person screams, and like, oh, there's just a poof of flour, and they turn into one of the vampire dudes. And the samurai use these beans to revive them, and these papers to like hold them in place. In between each of the episodes of the series, there's also little mini episodes where they collaborate with various other channels from other different countries and have like the people from those channels get attacked and turned into stalking vampires, but this doesn't seem to really have any impact on the overall plot of the series. And there's also this one episode where like it's completely different characters, and this one like random woman just comes in and fights a bunch of the vampires, and it was like made for a short film contest, and I think is also unrelated to the rest of the series. I'm not sure what that's about entirely. Takana or Takane. This is a claymation animator who specializes in the animation of extremely gory and violent animations. At least as violent and gory as claymation can be. Which, with a lot of red clay, is surprisingly gory. The subject matter of videos on these channels include things like women being kidnapped and abused, zombies taking over the world and being unalived by various different people like swordsmen and maids, alien creatures eating bunny girls at bars and then the bunny girls having to team up to fight them, an anthropomorphic pig kidnapping an anthropomorphic cat girl and trying to like kidnap him and abuse her, only for an anthropomorphic wolf to then come in and try and eat both of them. And sometimes there isn't even really a story, it's just clay monsters fighting each other for the sake of it. I almost want to say that this YouTube channel is like a fetish animation channel because, well, there are people who are attracted to like gore and violence, and a lot of the videos on this channel feature women in, clothing that's considered sexy, like in maid outfits and bunny girl outfits. There's one of a girl in a cat girl outfit. And so it wouldn't surprise me if the reason for that is because the creator of these videos is getting off to them. Which would also explain why all these videos are just so extremely over the top. Not all the videos are gory, there are a few where it's just claymation creatures battling each other physically with no actual BLOOD shed. There's even like a completely innocent series about like this just lemon dude rescuing a girl from like some evil villain. And it's so non-violent that the first episode even got marked as kids. There's 4 kids by Kappa. But the vast majority of videos on the channel are just, again, super, super red jelly filled. There's also one video called Shitcom, which is of like 2 people going on a date and the girl is holding in her need to go to the bathroom, and when the guy proposes she ends up vomiting up feces and then the man does the same. Make of that what you will. And there's even a few 3D animations on this channel, which are somehow less violent and less gory than the claymations. The Jungleless Monkey. This is a video made by the YouTuber Tipsy Duck, who's an SFM animator known for his more morbid animations, such as How to Climb a Tree, a video about 3 brothers who climb a tree, and one of them falls off and breaks their legs, so they put him down to avoid their parents getting upset because their parents told them not to climb trees. Or a funny, which is Scout from TF2 just listing various funny things uncomfortably with like this dark twist to multiple of them, like when he says a funny movie, it's a movie where they're talking about like the psychology of psychopaths. Or when he says a funny fact, it's the fact is that like a person commits self-game and every 39 seconds, with there being only 39 seconds left in the video when that happens. The video of his that's specifically on this iceberg is The Jungleless Monkey. This is a video that is about DK floating on some kind of spaceship, and he sees just a massive planet made of DKs floating towards him with like a ring of DKs orbiting around it. While a distorted and poorly sung version of A Whole New World is played in the background. And it ends with the DK in the spaceship being implied to join the mass of DKs in the planet. And some people think this video has a really deep meaning, and I personally think it has a very simplistic meaning. It's a joke. It's a planet made of apes. It's like Planet of the Apes. It's a very literal version of Planet of the Apes. That's it. It's not something about like collectives and society and the individual and whatever. No, it's Planet of the Apes, but literal. And for the final entry of part 2 of tier 5 of the deepest / massive YouTube iceberg, Destery Smith. Destery Smith was this like popular emo YouTuber who worked with another YouTuber called Ahoy Nato, and also worked with Shane Dawson. Why is he on this iceberg? He did bad things with kids. He manipulated like dozens of his fans. There are just like countless accusations of him manipulating multiple fans, some of whom were above 18 or 16, which being above 16 is okay in some states. But many of them were also teenagers whose age ranged from like around 14 to 16, and possibly even lower. He manipulated multiple of these girls into both being in a relationship with him, even while he was in
romantic relationships with other people. Like he was cheating on his of-age girlfriend with underage fans. And of course he also manipulated them into sending him nudes. At least that's the claim. This is of course alleged. This is a big ol' allegedly on this because as far as I know, he hasn't been arrested for possession of cheese pizza yet. And of course, once these accusations came out about him around 2 years ago, he made an apology video where he's like, well, cancel culture, I'm being cancelled, wow, wow, wow. And then he quote-unquote apologized for his actions without making any apology whatsoever. Purposely kept what he was even cancelled for vague, so that none of his fans that didn't know about it would find out. And unfortunately, he faced no real consequences aside from having to delete some of his most viewed videos. And he still makes YouTube videos to this day. And of course, our good old buddy Shane Dawson decided to keep him on his podcast and like help him. Yeah, Shane Dawson kept Destery Smith to edit his podcast even after all the accusations came out about Destery Smith. Why, Shane? Why? Alright, that was the final entry for part 2 of Tier 5 of the massive/deepest YouTube iceberg. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be covering the final part of Tier 5 very soon, hopefully. If I got anything wrong, please leave a comment as to what I got wrong. Thank you so much for watching, and bye.